It was March 27, 1977, a day that would become etched in aviation history forever. Two of the largest passenger planes in the world, Boeing 747s, carrying nearly 600 souls, found themselves on a small island runway in Tenerife. Within minutes, a deadly chain of miscommunication, fog, and human error would lead to the deadliest accident the skies have ever seen. This is the story of the Tenerife Airport disaster, the day when KLM Flight 4805 and Pan Am Flight 1736 met in the worst possible way. It all began, not in Tenerife, but in Gran Canaria Airport, Las Palmas, the intended destination for both flights. KLM Flight 4805, a Dutch Boeing 747, took off from Amsterdam's Schiphol Airport. It was commanded by Captain Jacob Veldhuizen van Zanten, one of KLM's most experienced pilots, even a face of the airline in advertisements. Alongside him were First Officer Klaas Moers and Flight Engineer Willem Schreuder. On board, 248 passengers, many of them Dutch holidaymakers heading for the sunny Canary Islands. At the same time, Pan Am Flight 1736, another Boeing 747, departed from Los Angeles, making a stopover in New York before heading across the Atlantic. Its captain was Victor Grubbs, a veteran pilot with decades of flying experience, assisted by First Officer Robert Bragg and a highly skilled crew. On board were 396 passengers, mostly Americans enjoying vacations, but fate intervened. On that morning, a terrorist bomb exploded inside Gran Canaria Airport. Authorities, fearing a second attack, shut down the entire facility. Every incoming flight was diverted to the smaller, quieter Los Rodeos Airport on Tenerife Island, a regional airport with just one runway and limited facilities. And so, two jumbo jets that were never supposed to meet were forced to share the same airfield. Los Rodeos Airport was not built to handle heavy international traffic. Suddenly, dozens of planes filled its parking area, taxiways, and terminals. Chaos reigned. The runways became parking lots. Ground crews were overwhelmed. Passengers were stranded in the terminal with little information. For the Pan Am crew, the delay was exhausting. They were stuck inside their aircraft with restless passengers. For the KLM crew, the delay posed another problem: strict Dutch aviation duty time limits. Captain Van Zanten wanted to get airborne again as soon as possible. Hours ticked by. The airport staff struggled to refuel planes, provide food, and process the backlog. And then, nature added its own obstacle. By late afternoon, a dense blanket of fog began to roll across Tenerife's runway. Visibility dropped to almost zero in places. The control tower at Los Rodeos had only one short-range radar, and in 1977, ground radar technology was primitive. Controllers could not see where aircraft were on the taxiways. They relied solely on radio communication and pilot reports. This was a recipe for disaster. Finally, the ban on Gran Canaria was lifted. Both Pan Am 1736 and KLM 4805 prepared for departure. But with the taxiways clogged by parked planes, only one route was possible. Aircraft had to taxi onto the main runway itself, then backtrack the entire length, turn around at the end, and take off in the opposite direction. KLM 4805 taxied first, moving slowly through the fog. Behind them, Pan Am 1736 followed on the same runway. The plan was simple. KLM would taxi all the way to the far end, turn around and wait for clearance. Pan Am would follow behind, then exit onto a taxiway to clear the runway. But in the fog, nothing was simple. Bragg suddenly saw the glow of KLM's landing lights charging through the fog. He shouted, "There he is! Look at him! God damn, that son of a... He's coming!" Captain Grubbs slammed the throttles forward, desperately trying to steer Pan Am off the runway. But it was too late. KLM 4805, fully loaded with fuel, was already at takeoff speed. Realizing too late that Pan Am was in his path, Captain Van Zanten tried to lift off early. The giant jet struggled upward, its nose rising. For a split second, it blew. This is where the chain of errors began. KLM 4805 reached the runway's end, turned around, and lined up for takeoff. Captain Van Zanten, anxious about duty limits and worsening weather, was eager to leave. Meanwhile, Pan Am was still taxiing down the runway, searching for their designated exit. But the fog was so thick, the crew couldn't find the turnoff. Then came the miscommunication that doomed them all. The KLM crew asked for takeoff clearance. The tower responded, "KLM, you are cleared to the Papa beacon. Stand by for takeoff clearance." The words were not clear. In aviation, precise phrasing is life or death. The phrase "stand by" meant, "Do not take off yet." But Captain Van Zanten misunderstood. He believed they were cleared for takeoff. As his massive 747 began to thunder down the runway, Pan Am was still ahead of them, in the fog. Inside the Pan Am cockpit, First Officer Bragg suddenly saw the glow of KLM's landing lights charging through the fog. He shouted, "Well, there he is. Look at him. God damn, that son of a... He's coming." Captain Grubbs slammed the throttles forward, desperately trying to steer Pan Am off the runway. But it was too late. KLM 4805, fully loaded with fuel, was already at takeoff speed. Realizing too late that Pan Am was in his path, Captain Van Zanten tried to lift off early. The giant jet struggled upward, its nose rising. For a split second, it looked like he might clear them. But then, the belly of KLM's aircraft ripped across Pan Am's fuselage, tearing it open like paper. Engines exploded, fuel ignited. A massive fireball engulfed the runway. 583 lives were lost. Only 61 passengers from Pan Am's aircraft survived, escaping through holes in the burning fuselage. On KLM's side, there were no survivors. The disaster shocked the world. How could two modern jumbo jets collide on the ground? Investigators from Spain, the Netherlands, and the United States worked together. They discovered that the accident was caused not by one single mistake, but by a chain of human errors, poor communication, and bad circumstances. A terrorist attack forced the diversion, an overcrowded airport with no ground radar, thick fog reducing visibility, ambiguous radio transmissions, and ultimately Captain Van Zanten's decision to take off without full clearance. The Tenerife Airport disaster remains the deadliest aviation accident in history. But from tragedy came change. Aviation authorities reformed radio communication. Phrases like takeoff can now only be used when actual clearance is given. Crew resource management, CRM training, was introduced worldwide, teaching co-pilots to challenge captains when in doubt. Airports invested in ground radar to track aircraft in fog. Every time you fly today, the safety improvements you experience were shaped, in part, by the lessons learned from Tenerife. 583 lives lost in an instant, families torn apart, a tragedy that changed aviation forever. Today, the names KLM 4805 and Pan Am 1736 stand as solemn reminders of what happens when human error, pressure, and chance align in the worst possible way. Yet their loss was not in vain. From the ashes of Tenerife, air travel became safer for millions who would fly in the decades to come. The skies may still hold danger, but the lessons of history keep us vigilant. Thank you for watching. If you found this video informative, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for more aviation stories and history.